This is the first time I've spoken to y'all in 13 months. That's so cool. It's cool to see it kind of mutate and everything keep going. So congratulations, that's awesome. For the last year, I have been a senior dev over at pff.com. PFF stands for Pro Football Focus. Not a football dude myself. I could watch it. Don't mind having a few beers out in the sunshine. You know, yelling at random people for no reason. I can get behind that. Not a stats guy. Don't have a favorite quarterback. Never owned a jersey. Whatever. The cool thing about them, to me, is that they do a lot of Elixir stuff. And you know, really nice team, and we're performing, you know, to some pretty wide audience on some pretty critical timelines. So obviously, everything this year has been batshit, and you know, that hasn't not touched the NFL. So you know, we've been stepping back. Pro Football Focus, we do stats for the NFL. We have contracts with all the NFL teams. I believe pretty much all of the major college teams, if not probably AAA, you know, whatever designation at this point. We are getting into various other things. We just opened up college football. So, so you know, kind of going back and forth with season being awkward and changing weeks and teams and how things are set up, we have to modify our code to be, you know, responded to those, even with something that's rigid like an NFL game. So what I do is I came in and I asked them, I was like, hey, what's your worst problem? Can I help you? And they said that it was their cart, it was their purchasing flow. All their credit card processing and their subscriptions were, it was just kind of the issue no one wanted to touch, honestly. And I was like, well, I'll do it. Let's do it. So we started from scratch, and we, you know, they were using Elixir, of course. Nice setup over there. They have infrastructure already set up. We all do Docker, and we're allowed to kind of run in our own little areas, so we can do kind of, you know, deploys all around each other and not block each other, step on toes. So good times. So I started blank, and I started with Elixir, and I went with LiveView immediately. And I believe that was LiveView, geez, like zero, I don't even remember at this point. Again, it was 13 months ago. So really young, and even upgrading it this entire time has worked out pretty well. No huge breaking changes. But I wanted to use something new and something, you know, kind of fun to work in. So I chose LiveView. TLDR, I still love it. It definitely has a little bit of rough edges, but it's really only been around the security kind of stuff, and I'll show you a little bit of that now. I imagine you guys have spoken a lot previously about LiveView and all that kind of stuff, so I don't want to, you know, belabor any other point, but if anything strikes interest, please yell out at any time. So kind of just going to go through what we did. So probably the big thing is that we did our payment processing. Payment processing, we chose a subscription provider called Recurly.com. We've used them again for a year. They've had some interesting issues. They provide some interesting things. So essentially, they're kind of a gateway to your payment provider processor, your Braintrees, your Stripes, PayPals, that kind of stuff. And they provide kind of a united front, and they give you a JavaScript client that allows you to, you know, insert a little iframe essentially with a credit card form. They even give you the little widgets. It's all nice and all that kind of stuff. Works really well on a normal site. Does not work very well on a LiveView site. The core issue being that anytime we update something and it's inside of a component, it will re-render. Well, that re-render does not work really well with an iframe. And that's what most security firms use for security. They inject an iframe into your site, and again, that breaks LiveView because it's kind of its own little island off on its own, and it gets clobbered and re-rendered and blanked, essentially. That's not really good for your credit card UI. So let's see. Our big stuff, we come through, I'll show you our router. I should have looked up some metrics. I do apologize. I believe we're running probably 80,000 accounts live recurring monthly right now. This application is one that I started called Cosmos, and it handles all of our payment processing, all the credit cards. You can pay through PayPal. We're going to have Amazon Pay, Apple Pay, all that kind of stuff. But it also uses Recurly with their library called Recurly Js. Recurly Js basically gives you a way to get tokenized credit cards. So user types in their information, it goes off to Recurly and that iframe JavaScript wise, they tokenize it, comes back into this iframe area, they insert it into a hidden token inside of your payment, your credit card form essentially. So in the end, your server doesn't actually get the credit card number, expiry date, anything like that. It simply gets a token that when someone buys something, you can use that token instead of a credit card. And Recurly will have that token, simply an ID on their side. They look it up, they understand that that is actually represents a PayPal account or it represents a credit card, all that kind of thing. They handle all of the recurring billing, dunning, which I learned a lot about if you're unfamiliar, which if you are, good. Dunning is basically the offset in time that, like in emails, that you send people emails in terms of a sales process. So their credit card doesn't rebill. You don't automatically want to cut them off. You want to give them time, send them an email, give them 2 days, 3 business days, that kind of thing, with kind of an exponential back off before you actually cancel it. So again, Recurly handles some of that, handles the management of it. But they also have kind of out of band webhooks. So say your credit card is due to be rebilled monthly or annually, depending on what the subscription service that you do. Say that card's no good. They'll send us a webhook, XML, and we basically have to look it up and update accounts and do all that kind of stuff. So that's how we do it, and we do it through LiveView. So we're using pretty much not homegrown authentication, but it's based off of Come On In. That's handled in a separate system that I call out to. We call that Groot. We have a series of plugs where we, check out that people have access to whatever, the cart or the dashboard that they're accessing, the articles they're accessing. And we have different integrations with things like FanDuel, DraftKings, all those betting commercials that you see during football games. We're in with them. Also, one kind of cool thing about PFF, just as a sidebar, again, if you're a football person, Chris Collinsworth, he's the NFL like Sunday night spokesperson, the commentator. He owns the company, so it's kind of neat. We have a lot of interesting access to like NFL folks, like Bill Belichick will walk through and it's like, oh okay, it's just very odd. Again, if you're a football person, but go through, do a whole bunch of stuff, blah blah blah. I started out with one LiveView. Let's talk about like lessons learned as I'm looking at this router. I started out with one LiveView. I took it as though LiveView was kind of the single page app, and that it was going to kind of run many different pages, logical areas of concern within my app. It took some growing pains to figure out that that's absolutely the wrong way to do it. LiveView, kind of little talking point, LiveView is just a controller. That's all it is. It's just a real fancy controller that allows stuff to happen real quick and real fancy like. That's all it is. So for every time you would create a controller, I would create a new LiveView. It's that simple. One nice thing that I've learned while using it is that you can also put the HTML right next to it, which I haven't done in this app. That's fun. Yeah, all right, never mind. I have separate templates. Yeah, anyway, so I have a LiveView for accounts, for joining up, for adding your payment, previewing a payment, checking out what subscriptions that you may have already, and a nice thank you controller. We do have a little bit of an API, some callbacks. Yeah, usual router. This is probably one of our big ones. This is what drives, if you go to pff.com and you go to sign up, you'll be directed to, I believe it's dashboard.pff.com/reactivate. And this is what actually drives that. So simple live view, we come in. I'm expecting you to already come through and sign up. So sign up in our case is that you've hit, log in with Facebook, log in with Gmail, create an account, that kind of thing. The user is already created before it comes into my system. And that's what is represented here. So I have their token and then I have my internal user ID. Basically, usually, just like a controller, I grab the user by the user ID. I load up a cart for them, make sure it's nice and valid, all that kind of stuff. And then I send back a tuple with OK and a socket filled with information that I need to set up for mounting. Another lesson that I've learned, mounting is simply to give out the skeleton that your page should expect. Think of a page view, page object, I'm sorry. It doesn't have to be correct, it doesn't have to be real, but have the keys that you expect for that live view up there in your mounted, fulfill them in the update routine. Seems simple, but it works many different ways. And if you do it the way I did, where everything was just mount, you're going to get a little bit of headache because, mount and update kind of run separately and it can clobber each other. We handle some params. I come through. I want to make sure that I'm grabbing the current URI because I want to check where the user is in later steps. Handle info is a no-go really. I'm basically just eating it. Render, real simple. I have a live component. That's for our notices, our flash messages, our alerts, that kind of good stuff. Our usual structure, containers, and then we have 2 columns set up: main bar and sidebar, or main area and sidebar. Then we have different things for like Google Analytics. Make sure person viewed the page, person clicked the page. That's been the hardest growing pain that I've had was JS interoperability. I'll talk about that too here in a second. Before I finish my gin and tonic. I have simple events here like store address. As you're entering your credit card information, certain things flicker, I've noticed. So the easiest way for me to mitigate some of that flicker is to basically temporarily cache the user's address as they're entering it. So I have a form sending back this event called store event, or I'm sorry, store address, sending back billing information. I'm simply setting this onto the socket. We have some it probably helps to show you guys this. Let's see. Instead of just describing what it does. Let's see. Now, all right, give me 2 seconds. I got to start up this system and another one. So we'll start up this and that group system that I mentioned that handles a lot of the user auth. That's just another Elixir app running here locally on a separate port. And then I'll load this guy up. Of course, it wants to compile now. All right, well, that's working. Toggle plan here. What that does is essentially visually, we have different plans and we have families of plans. So we have basically our low-grade professional, our high-grade professional, our low-grade college football, our high-grade college football things. And there's different subscriptions, different plans that you can have in there. So essentially the idea is that if you select our high-grade plan, it should deselect the low-grade plan. So this does a lot of kind of flip-flopping in the state, in the socket, and that updates in real time what the UI actually looks like. Of course, this is going very slow. We have the ability to add coupons. Recurly handles all of this. So essentially we set up different coupons. One could be fixed, one could be percentage. We could have different things that can only apply to certain plans, certain other plans only once, lifetime account-based, plan-based, all this different great stuff. What we need to do from our perspective is essentially accept code, take that code, validate it, make sure that A, it's live, it's active, B, that this user hasn't already used it, C, it can apply to this plan, all that kind of great stuff. That's all handled in this add coupon event. Simply comes in through params on line 138. And then I grab essentially the current user out of the socket assigns. I make sure that that coupon is validated based on code. On that callback, I'll update the cart. Essentially, I'll throw the coupon in there. So now the cart module will understand that there's a coupon associated with this. Do what you do. I note the event. Oh, as I destroy code, I note the event. It's kind of cheap logging. Works really well, especially instead of digging through CloudWatch bullshit. Yeah, simply assigning stuff, letting it go through. Now that we are live, it looks like. Let's see. Well, let's do this. Mix ecto reset. I have an old account there. We'll reboot this guy. All right, I think I got to share this window now. How do I share the window? There we go. Hopefully you guys can see a beautiful sign-in window. All right. This is locally. So again, this is a subsystem. This is not the system that I generally write on. But anyway, I log in with Google. Google does its dance. I'm going to click on one of my accounts. Boom, I log in. It's going to give me something weird, of course, because it's being recorded. Yeah, do that. Do it again. Perfect. All right, hold on. Let me clear my cookies. Live demo, right? Remove all shown. This happens because I just cleared my database. Out of band. So now I go back to log in. I create Google. I don't have an account. I'm simply clicking on this. It'll go through. God damn it. Of course, it's going to be a gigantic pain. Dude, for real. All right. Sorry, this is a cookies issue.
You mentioned it possibly being a problem with recording. Should we stop it? See if that gets through it? You can always stop it and restart it.
No, well, I don't. Honestly, I'm not showing you. Okay, this thing's just being a jerk. It's my local dev environment. I click on some buttons and some stuff happens, and then there's a form and I put a credit card information in it. I click the button. There's really nothing else to see. If you go to dashboard.pff.com, you can literally see what I'm describing right now. Actually, I could do that. It's live. Or the staging version. All right. Here's an already logged in account. I was trying to show the join thing, but whatever. I'll show you the dashboard. This is just another live view. Okay, so you're all logged in, blah, 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 blah. You're already signed up. So you have a payment method. This is all of your billing information. This is the Recurly form. You may notice that it's styled just a little bit differently. This is the iframe that they inject, which is really kind of bad for what we're trying to do because it clobbers everything. So the trick that I have done in this case for Recurly JS is some JS interoperability. And that's kind of the trick. LiveView setup. There we go. So you guys, you have used LiveView, you are familiar with this. You're setting up your live socket as normal. The only real difference that you have to do LiveView hooks, add in this hooks key. You're
still showing the browser as a heads up. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, that didn't. Okay, hold on. Fun. Flip back over. All right. Sorry about that. You see the VS Code window again? Oh, good. This is what I was talking about. Every app.js, basically, when you're doing LiveView, I did this before the generators, but this is essentially what it puts in there. Only thing that I've added is this hooks keyword with the LiveView hooks. LiveView hooks, blah, 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 blah. We come over to our JavaScript. Come on, bud. These are all of our hooks. Geez. Trying to show where that actually gets imported. Oh, yeah, I just export a whole bunch of handlers. So let's say like Amazon Pay. When Amazon Pay is mounted, I think I took this one out actually. It's a terrible thing. Let's do credit card. We'll go through and we'll find where I initiate this. This is how you do JS interoperability with LiveView, is essentially through these PHX hooks. And that simply gives a JavaScript function header name that LiveView understands. That's simply a PHX hook. That's all. So that corresponds back to here because I set it up in the other hooks. So that calls credit card form. I'm passing along this. And in this case, in this context, that is actually the it's not the DOM element, but it's the hook, and that has the DOM element inside of it. So if we go over to credit card form, see where that's at, credit card form, payment methods, credit card form. You see how we actually handle how we handle this with Recurly. Unfold, yo. So we'll go through. Whenever that form is presented, I will call this method. There's a Recurly Js lib that we get, and I insert a token in there. And that token is, one of our keys for Recurly to understand who's talking to them. I'm grabbing the button that the user will click. I basically push out this form in different ways. So it's kind of like a standalone component. Sometimes it's its own page. So I need to, know what button I'm looking for, what that button needs to do, where it needs to go. That's what this form button and redirect method does. I'm grabbing the form itself. Recurly, their lib provides a class called elements, and that's the card element is actually this guy right here. Well, can't show you, but it's the credit card form on the UI. We're hooking everything up. We're attaching it, and we're saying, hey, when you click on this button, don't do whatever you were going to do. First, we need you to go to Recurly. Here's the whole trick. User enters in their payment information, click submit. We have to hijack that, grab that information in that iframe. Thank God their JS lib does this for us, sends it out to them, grabs that aforementioned token, sets it for us. That's what it's doing right here. So Recurly, the JS lib again has a token method. Elements is the iframe that it inserts, and we're grabbing the information out of there, and I'm sending it to another thing called save billing information. Save billing info, I believe, goes back to LiveView. Yeah. So I go back and I grab the rest of the form. I want all, your address, blah, 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 billing information. Here's all your fun stuff. I want to push this event over to LiveView. Whatever LiveView is hosting this component, I don't care. I just need it to handle the event. And it's called save billing info. The information I'm sending, obviously, is the address information styled like this. LiveView is going to push everything off to Recurly, come back. If it's valid, cool, i.e. I have a token and it's been inserted, continue on, good sir. Otherwise, show an error. Another thing I've learned dealing with Recurly, there is a billion different credit card errors. They come up with new ones every single day. In fact, if credit cards work, they're valid. I don't want to say it's the exception, but it's it's nice when there isn't just some bullshit. Because again, a lot of stuff can go wrong. So a lot of error handling, Okay, so if the thing doesn't work, or if it does work, I'm sorry, we're going to tell Google Analytics that something worked. Great, we're going to call whatever callback was attached to that button. Again, since this component is in different things, a button can do different things. Sometimes I need it to show just an inline error message. Other times I need it to redirect. It's great. I'm sure there's a better way to do it, but this is the way I've done it. One interesting thing that I found that I have not been able to solve at all, which rears its ugly head right here. It's when the card fails. Someone types in some information, and it's a bad card for whatever reason. Fails CVV, zip code's wrong, blah 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 blah. It puts the components into an error state, puts a red line around it. Great, very helpful. The thing with LiveView is that I can't get this thing to re-trigger and remove the error state without reloading the entire window, thus negating the fun of LiveView. So I beat my head against that for a while, and have not been able to figure it out. So you get a comment. Yeah. So we have the save billing information. Again, this is basically what that JS form hits. We're going through, we're hitting subscriptions model, we're saving the billing information. Users are local, token is the Recurly Js token, providers whatever they paid with, PayPal, Braintree, all that good stuff. Simple ways to remove coupons. This was a huge learning thing and low-hanging fruit, by the way. We had, I launched out the cart and people were putting in coupon codes that were valid but were no longer valid. No big deal. Of course, it happens in the due course of things. I forgot to provide a link to remove a bad coupon. So that blocked every single checkout if you had a bad coupon because you didn't have a way to remove it. It was automatically tied to your account. It was automatically in your cart. I helpfully provided it for you, but it was no longer valid and there was no way to remove it, and thus no way to check out. So, like a magician, 4 lines of code solves that by adding a simple link to the front end to remove the coupon. That is a normal, what was it, preview live. Oh, where is it in HTML? It's somewhere in there. It's probably in Join Live. Yeah. Anyway, that simply updates the cart. It removes the coupon from it, updates the, notes the fact that it was removed, goes on its merry way. One thing that I have liked about LiveView is that I can split up different HTML fragments even without using LiveView components, mainly for structure. You kind of get this deeply nested skeleton, and sometimes, obviously the business logic should be extracted out, but even sometimes like the for loops, when you're actually inserting this information becomes lost because there's so much structure. I've enjoyed kind of just doing private methods here that simply use the LiveView sigil, how you pronounce that, to output, a LiveView enabled template. And then I farm these out to smaller sub-functions. Again, kind of just moves the complexity to more, single areas of concern kind of thing. A lot of stuff has been moved in the LiveView components. Again, I started this as a single LiveView. It worked really well in the beginning, and then it grows very, very quickly. Your events grow rapidly. Your renderings grow very large. So breaking them down earlier rather than later is certainly easier for you. Yeah, but essentially all these smaller private functions are called and they just get bubbled up into a larger HTML template. Oh, geez. That's essentially how we handle LiveView. There's not much to it. We have the join thing. It follows all those patterns I just showed. So if we join, then we'll go through, that join handles your credit card entering, your validations. Then that will go to preview. Preview essentially takes that same cart object that we were just using, presents things in a nice orderly fashion. Hey, do you agree? This is how much information or how much you want to spend. We take that billing information now that we had your credit card information. And since we have your address, we can now charge you tax. Yay, tax. So you thought credit card processing sucked. Processing taxes sucks too, because, makes no logical sense. Date times look like cake comparatively. That's why we pay Recurly a lot of money. So we take this card object, basically going through there, again, taking your billing address, yada, yada, yada. Here's the coupon you have. Here's the subscriptions you chose from these families. Here's what you're going to owe, the amount of period of time that you're happy to pay for it, and you submit it. Then we show you thanks. And thanks live is simply a live view that based on whatever package you just purchased. If you purchase the nicest one, we say, thank you a lot. You're going to really enjoy it. If you purchase the lesser one, we're going to go, wow, you should have upgraded already because you're not going to get enough of the good stuff that we're trying to sell you. So, you know, it's a sales cycle. Yeah. Then we have the dashboard stuff. I showed that quickly. I'll show this again. Sorry, there's no way to quickly flip over at all. I'm going to stop this, and then I'm going to flip over to this other screen. Take over as the main presenter. Am I not? Okay. All right, now you should see this beautiful dashboard. Yes, so the subscriptions live, or I'm sorry, accounts live handles this. This is the same payment form that I didn't show you earlier on Join Live. It's the same field, believe it or not. That's why we have to have separate buttons, because I've reused this component on Join where it's inline, but I also need to use it here in Dashboard where it's inline. Yeah. We show a payment history. This just comes back through API. It's another small live view component. I showed you the main, the private, you know, the little render function that showed the main area in the sidebar. This is the layout here. Obviously, left is the main, sidebar is the right. We have smaller live view components here that show you know, what if you use the card, if you got PayPal, the on account shows you what it is. You can edit it, what current subscriptions you have, what packages you have, along with a simple edit. We have a way to, oh, there we go. There's my payment. I gotta fix that header. We have a little account information thing. Simply update your stuff here. It lets me know that if you're logged in socially or not. We have different discounts. Another integration that we've used, didn't really touch LiveView at all. Simple controller OAuth callbacks. A place called ID Me allows you to essentially validate for sure that someone is a student or military personnel or a nurse or, you know, veteran, that kind of stuff. And it's a good way to provide discounts. So if you're ever in the subscription market, you want to kind of kick back to some people, they do that. We also have a subscription page, and this component, several components actually are reused from that Join Live. So when you're actually joining up, this is what you see on top of what you can use to manage your subscriptions after you've already signed up. So we have the plans, top, we have, you know, Pro and the college subscriptions. Then we have the different families. We have Edge and Elite. So if I click, you know, if I'm already subscribed to PFF Elite, as it shows here, it should already be pre-selected. We're recurring, so the thing is, you know, showing as recurring. If you want to stop recurring, we don't put you through any hassle. Done. We won't charge you anymore. Just click that button and it's done. You want to re-enable your account? Sweet. Good. There you go. We'll charge you again when the time's due. If you want to downgrade even, we're not going to cause issues like, you know, other subscription things. So let's say I can't do annual anymore. I want to go down to monthly. Sweet. Downgrade your subscription. It's another LiveView component. Understanding what we're downgrading based on the value. Provides this button. Oh, your account is currently past due. So yeah, that's what I get for staging data. Yeah, so but you can create brand new subscriptions. Say I want to subscribe to this, you know, college football premium. Oh, it didn't air out. Cool. So, you know, how much it costs. Let's say I want to add some fake coupon. I hit apply, goes through, adds the $5 off. There's that super sweet remove coupon link that I didn't add that everyone lost their minds about. So simply toggling that and add that back. Discounts it, hit purchase. It's probably blow up because it's staging. Nope, cool. So there's our thanks live. Shows that we've gone through all these steps. Go to the account summary. Boom, takes you back to the dashboard. It's nice to see that we have 2 subscriptions. Yada, yada, yada. Yeah, shows that our payment was added right here, 10/6, how much we paid, where it was paid from. And that goes through all the various systems. They do all the lot of the taxing stuff on the back end. Yeah, a lot of identity fraud kind of things. The hardest part is really kind of handling all the callbacks and making sure that the UI is updated with, LiveView. That's it, honestly. My biggest takeaway is that LiveView is a controller. That's all it is. The more or the sooner I started thinking about it in that context, it became incredibly natural. But honest to God, it took me 7 months, 6, 7 months to really fully feel like I was proficient with, like essentially, yeah, like LiveView and the whole stack. So previously I was doing a lot of business, so I was rusty for quite a while, about 2 years or so. But it's been fantastic. But anyway, that's kind of it. Any questions? I'm more than happy to answer. I'm more than happy to show more or whatever. Peter, brother, what's up?
Question I had was, I'm doing something similar, but it has to do with graphing data a lot. And one of the things I'm curious how you solved or what your approach was is unifying your unifying your like login plugs. Since I think like the default when you hit mount, it gives you a session, but that's the whatever is the session there. It looked like you were using. Do you use some sort of like session gen server or something like that, or are you just using whatever the session store is?
We're simply using regular cookies. I mean, that's it. Nothing special whatsoever. But you're right. Mount only has access to the session. It's a key value, string key value pair that's passed in. It does, and a socket. But the socket is really, I mean, it's it's like a new con essentially. But yeah, then update comes through, and that's when your information is actually passed into it, and that's when you can assign it to the socket, derive any values, set in return. Yeah. Yeah, it took me, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I thought you were finishing. I was kind of curious about the token. You said that when you put in your card info, the server doesn't actually receive it; it receives a token. I may have missed it. If you already said it, I apologize. But what is the provenance of that token? Like, where does it come from? Is there some kind of cryptographic handshake underlying that, or how does it get generated?
They text it to me on my cell phone, and I go, and then no, I'm being an asshole. No, I use a service called Recurly, Recurly.com, and they have a lib called, appropriately enough, Recurly Js. We include that. That inserts the JavaScript iframe that is actually the credit card information field. So the actual number, CVV, expiry, that kind of stuff. That lib takes that information from that iframe, shoots it over to Recurly via their own private methods that I can't touch really. And they tokenize the credit card information. So it's never passes through my server, never hits my logs, never, doesn't come anywhere close to me. All I get is a token back from them that represents the payment method, billing address. So yeah, that's an important caveat. I'm sorry. The token does not just represent the credit card or payment method. It represents the billing address and a payment method. So it's all that you need in order to charge somebody money. That's a huge thing that I learned when they started PFF a decade ago, 15 years ago. They set up PayPal in a way with recurring subscriptions, that essentially we had like a one-time use with their card, and that allowed them to do subscription recurring. But if we needed to move that token, that card token, we could not. So when we moved onto this new system, we lost all of our PayPal users. So I've done some interesting methods behind the scenes to actually get those people back. Something that Recurly themselves, we paid them a lot of money, and they weren't willing to do it. But I shouldn't say willing. It's not nefarious or anything. It just wasn't something that was on their bill of service. It's essentially a way to recapture people that we couldn't move over. But yeah, forgot where I was going with that.
You mentioned something along the way that said like they've had some interesting issues and they provide some interesting services to you. I'm kind of curious what kind of issues you ran into with Recurly.
Perfect. Well, the biggest thing is that they go down a lot. They just bounce. They do. When they bounce, my Sentry explodes. 8, 9, 10 things. I'm sure I could quell that a little bit better with my own error handling. But they tend to bounce and they don't tend to get back to you very quickly. PFF is not small potatoes. I mean, we're not AT&T or anything like that, but I mean, we spend some money. They've been a little bit slow in that front. Probably the biggest, probably most concerning issue overall is that we went live and they didn't know we were live and we didn't know we were live. And that's not really good for a payment processor. Just one day I was like, wow, these test cards won't work. That doesn't, oh shit. That happened. And honestly, I to this day, I don't believe our environment is fully set up correctly. So in retrospect, in hindsight, I would have gone with Stripe. I don't know. I've used Stripe before. I won't say purely for subscriptions, probably more one-time charges. So I don't know if they have like exact feature parity or anything like that. But I've gotten a sense that they're not, I don't know, they're growing. And I'm sure it's good growing pains and stuff. And it's not all the time. I mean, I certainly don't mean to trash them. But I have noticed that their API bounces a little bit more frequently than I would like to. And in that case, what that means for me is that I have many of these systems. I have 2 internal systems, 5 to 7 external ones. Anything hiccups, blips, I got to reconcile that. That doesn't make me a happy camper. You know what I mean? And especially other people who, may be in the process and they entered their information and it was charged, but it didn't hit back one of our systems. So the money was taken, but they did not get permissions. That's not a good, you know what I mean? Like you don't go to Penny's and walk out without jeans and someone takes your card. So that's been a headache. But yes, again, truthfully, I don't know if that would have been better with anybody else. More maybe nature of the game. And again, the scale that we run. We're usually really quiet during the off season, but the first few weeks we have a code freeze. You don't touch shit. I mean, it's go time. There's a lot of people. Here's another interesting thing. I learned there's other industries I worked in. There's only deploy windows, right? You think like football, like, okay, don't deploy on Saturday nights, Sunday nights, right? Monday night football, right? I mean, there's a rigid schedule. No, oh my God, these people go 24/7. Like, you can't do this because the fantasy football guys always meet these days, or the commentators have to work this day, or the NFL needs it by this day. And it's really kind of neat. So I won't pretend that I do a lot on that side. I'm the credit card nerd, but it's kind of neat. So
appreciate your insights on that and your experiences. That's interesting.
Sure.
So what about is the PFF site in general in LiveView or just the credit card piece?
Right now, the credit card piece is the only one that's fully in LiveView, but everything else is Elixir. Sans a couple of WordPress sites here or there for marketing stuff. But all Elixir, all Docker, all AWS, all ECS, and CloudFormation. Surprisingly enough, I'm not trying to toot their horn. I'm not a huge cheerleader fella, but their infrastructure, one of the things that really attracted me to this company a year ago was the fact that they had their deployment process already in hand. There was no bullshit. If I needed to deploy, I could press a button and 8 minutes later, I could have a deploy. That's been massive. Just being able to get stuff out, kind of breaking that dam, deploying makes us feel good. And if you can't deploy, or if you don't feel certain about that deploy, it makes you feel weird, makes me feel weird. So that's been one of the nice things. And Elixir has done a ton for that. The rolling distillery in, it's been great. It's been really cool. So, yeah. Any other questions?
So what's your overall, I mean, after having done all this, what's your reaction or 10,000-foot view of how well it's gone and stuff like that?
Yeah. Would I do it again? Yeah, I would. The thing that I wish someone told me was that LiveView is simply a controller. Think of it that way. You still have your views. They can be internal, they can be external, depending on how you want to compose them. Otherwise, instead of writing, your 7 RESTful routes or doing resources, whatever, just write live. And instead of controller actions, you have events. It just simply softens the hard, rigid borders around requests and updating your views. It's the most beautiful thing because you don't have to think in terms of Elixir, then think of in terms of JavaScript. And you don't have to test JavaScript. I mean, that's the most fundamental, beautiful thing that I've ever seen. I hate JavaScript. I've been a dev for 25 years. I fucking hate it. It's always different. I always struggle with it. I have to compile or transcompile or cross-compile or pray to the moon to to get something to work. And again, I'm not the smartest human being on earth, but I ain't the dumbest. And boy, it's a tar pit for me. So that's truly what LiveView has saved me. All of my thoughts are in one context. They're expressed in one way, in one system, and they're tested cohesively.
How does
killer.
testing work with that? Since most of it, credit card and processing and integration and all that tends to be that like token-based third-party thing. Do you have like recording of the third-party service responses and you're testing those with how LiveView does that, or?
That's exactly it. Yes, I'll run through probably once or twice. Getting the feature working on staging or my dev environment. I'll copy the request, or I'm sorry, the response, and then I use was it JJ's mock library. So just internal with mocks. It gets a little grody, especially with this system. There's a lot of external interfaces and that kind of stuff, and I got to mock them all. I've tried different methods to do that. I've tried inline mocks. I know the Elixir community is a little sketchy with them, and that's fine. I understand. I've tried setting up mock services where I've had a cowboy server run and actually, in parallel when I'm running tests, listen on a port, serve information. It's all bad. I've never found an easy, simple, killer, clean way to test all that stuff. But again, with LiveView, with your live components, you're simply testing an Elixir module. And LiveView gives you a whole bunch of test helpers. So the hardest thing is always getting set up and getting the current user context into your tests. And once that's in, you simply test HTML input and output out of components. So pretty decent. No test spies or anything crazy like that on JS land.
And what about talking about the components? I saw that you split a little bit the little pieces of HTML. So how do you compare that? Actually, I didn't get how do you compose all those little private functions, but how do you compare that with creating a separated component of LiveView? What do you prefer? How do you decide that?
Laziness, and that was the easiest, shortest method. If I did it again, they would probably all be LiveView components. The only thing that I did with those private functions, they were just basically one larger render function that called a bunch of smaller functions that bubbled up and added the HTML, much like a poor man's live component, essentially. So there's no benefit. Frankly, they probably should be LiveView components, but a lot of times it's just for structure. So, I don't know. It seems like a little bit overkill, in my opinion, to create a LiveView component. Well, I don't know. It might just be a container. You know what I mean? It's simply like a visual structure. So I don't know. Some people might prefer that. Don't know.
Great.
Anything else? I'm here all night.
I'm just a bit flummoxed about how you managed to avoid their iframe.
I don't interact with it at all.
Right.
Right. The whole thing is that I'm
sorry, do they have an API that you call REST interface? What do they use?
Right. Yeah. Let's see. Is VS Code showing right now or my window? Okay. Sorry. Give me 1 second. I'll flip over and I'll show you the JS stuff real quick.
Must have missed.
You are presenting. Yes, I know I'm presenting. I'd like to present something else. Thanks.
For context, I think there's a thing called Phoenix-update, and you can say ignore. So then you can do things where you can say like ignore this from the re-render function, so that way you don't accidentally blow away your iframe and put in a new iframe.
That's exactly right.
But because of the JS interoperability, you then still have to like put some of the hooks back so that it knows, oh hey, this webhook or this.
There it is. The hooks. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So I have this PHX hook that essentially calls Recurly Js, and that inserts their iframe. The whole thing that I have from there's really no way to not clobber it, honestly. I tried PHX ignore or update ignore. Gosh, I'm trying to remember now. I went back 3 or 4 times with that, and it just wasn't behaving right at all. The only way I found to make it work is to mount it, and essentially anytime anyone updates anything, update that. And that's why I have to store that address. It's kind of hard to show you without going back and forth, but essentially when I type in my first name or last name, say something invalidates or goes back to the server, it could potentially wipe out that form. So I have to set all that information on the socket, set that as the default value on the inputs as the user's. Yes, exactly. It's grody. Let me see if I can call it up easily in a showable way. Yeah, I have like subcomponents that handle this. That's part of the fun. What did I call that? Payment field, something like that. Yeah. Yes. Oh God, I forgot about this. Okay. Oh Jesus, so ugly. So I have a payment field, and the payment field is simply a wrapper around an input, right? Blah 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 blah. It's a LiveView component. Every time we mount it, it's going to get some information. I'm basically just shoveling everything into it. So billing info is whatever the user may have already set. Data's data field, field's name, the human name is the, you know what I mean? It's all the stuff describing an input. So when I go through here, I have to set up different data fields for Recurly JS on my payment form. So they're all called data-recurly, say dash first name, dash last name, dash CVV, that kind of stuff. So that's what actually shows, you know, the inputs on ours. And when you click submit, that kind of thing, it takes the information from Recurly JS, takes the information from that iframe and these fields that are labeled as data-recurly something, takes all of those billing information fields, munges it on their side into that token, throws it back over into our form. But yeah, there's a whole lot of, frankly, this has been a minute. This is 2 months since I've written this. There's a lot of checking and grossness back and forth as to where I had to wrap this entire thing in an input. But the whole big lesson learned was re-rendering essentially this on mounted and on update, the Recurly stuff. The iframe was just gross. Yeah, it was so gross that I don't even remember how the hell I did it. It was a lot of hacking and a lot of tweaking and getting it to work, and then it worked. And again, the big takeaway was remounting it, caching all the information that they have stored up to that point, and you know, reapplying it when needed.
So do you, for that token that they provide, do you persist that in your database, or do you just get a new one every time, or do you get one when they log in?
great question. That token's only good for 15 to 20 minutes, I believe. So it's only good kind of in the moment that you're using it, which is, kind of perfect for, joining. So, want to make sure it's fresh. That's part of the cart module. It checks out the token that may be stored in there, make sure that it's fresh. If not, it'll ask the person to re-add their credit card information if they're signing up. That's all handled on, the token freshness essentially is handled on Recurly's side.
Does it play well with Google, populating credit card fields and stuff?
Not sure about Google. I use 1Password. Works fine. Yeah, I can go in and does autocomplete. With Chrome, I use Firefox, 1Password, does all that good stuff. Yep. It's the hard part with well, I guess the cool thing about LiveView, you can do some incredibly complex stuff that the user has no idea what's going on. So with just one simple click, you can really add on a whole slew of things that update a whole bunch of different stuff. So it's the beauty of LiveView. So. Anything else I can answer? Yeah, man, go for it.
Which is, I probably have a mountain of regular live views with no live components. What is the point at which you decide, okay, I need to stop checking is connected and instead actually make this into a live component? Because that's my current hell.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. Writing this, I was about 5-6 months in. I'm probably where you are right now. You got a whole lot of HTML, a whole lot of events. Starting to look like spaghetti. It's really, there's no hard and fast rules. It's kind of like context. It's just areas of concern. I try to break it, you might have a section on a web page. That's a great LiveView component right there. You don't want to get too minute. Again, you want to have an area of concern. Something that has events, something that's actionable is a great way to kind of distill or discern when you want a component, or even just rendering. Again, large hunks of stuff you can just kind of compartmentalize and shove off over to the side. LiveView works great even if you don't need to do stateful stuff or handle events. Someone asked me, like, when do you know when to stop refactoring? And I was like, that's like chewing a good piece of meat. Like, when do you stop chewing? I don't know. Like, you just know when you're done. It's a feel, yeah. But starting far earlier with LiveView components, it will pay off big time. Just ease of mind and clarity. Honestly, it's all about clarity. It doesn't really add all that much. It just compartmentalize things as to where you can logically find them and test them far easier. You have to set up far less concerns too when you kind of break it down.
Cool. Thanks.
Of course, man. Anything else?
I've got one for you.
Sure, man.
If I have JavaScript, I've got a value out on the browser. How do I shove it up the socket and get it back to LiveView to the controller? Or is that even a possible path?
Sure. Yes. Let me think. You're talking about the LiveView hooks. I'm trying to think if I can definitely show you one. I'm trying to think of one to show you. Bubbling up information, socket, info trust. Let's see. This is just crap. Here's some stuff. All right. There's a place where I have to send information around. There's one in here called Note Event. That's probably a big one. Note Event, right? So I pass in a hook, and then the hook has a bunch of different objects: element, dataset, event ID. That's how we do it. So let me find an area where I call it from HTML or somewhere in here. Current payment method. Yeah, why not? This one will work. So here's the line here. It's another LiveView, just a render method, shoving out some HTML, saying, hey, if your business info, or I'm sorry, billing info isn't present, click here to add it. Otherwise, here's your payment information. That's just the thing we saw in the sidebar. Here we have, again, the little edit link that we saw in the sidebar. If someone clicks on that, I want you to note this event, right? And what is the event? Well, I simply add this data, HTML fragment in here, data event ID. So when this hook fires, when someone clicks on it, it'll call note event. And in the LiveView hooks, I just pass along this, remember, in the context. Well, this is the hook. So I get essentially all this information back. So hook EL data set, they automatically essentially, cast event ID, they camel case it from the fragment that's in there. So this is all you need. It'll pass it all along for you. The JS interoperability is actually pretty decent. It allows you to compartmentalize a lot of stuff, and even better than that, you can kind of only inject the JavaScript that you need when you need it. Depending on the lib, of course. So you don't have to, have everything run kind of up in the headers and such. So that's really it. It's data, blah, 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 and it'll cast it over to camel case for you, and it's in the data set. Use it as normal. If you need to push, you can also push this information in. So say you have information in JavaScript land, how do you get that JavaScript information over to the LiveView server? They actually give you a method called push event. Camel case, because it's in JavaScript, it'll push information from a JavaScript event over to your LiveView server. You can do anything you want to do on that LiveView server, and then you can update any clients that you need to. So kind of a neat thing. It's absolutely a bi-directional communication channel, which is massive. The communication, again, from JavaScript to LiveView could be a hair cleaner, but there's a method called a push event and push event 2 that was just added in LiveView like 0.14, something like that. But very useful from getting information from JavaScript to LiveView instead of LiveView to JavaScript.
We use nice thing is we use that for a charting library or charting application that we have where we use Apache eCharts, which does not like being re-rendered every single time. And it can handle fresh data. So what we do is everything around the charts is LiveView, but the charts have Phoenix hooks. So then you can do push events so that you can say, okay, well, if they clicked on some little icon in the Apache eCharts, I might actually want to know that. I might want to be able to provide some sort of data so that, like, if they click on some bubble in a chart, I can then fill in a Phoenix LiveView rendered table below it. And that way I can say, cool, give me the event from Apache eCharts, which is regular JavaScript, and I'll push the event back, and then I'll push new data into the chart, and I'll render a new thing below.
It's amazing. I don't know if I've ever seen like kind of true bi-directional like data flow. I don't know. Anytime I've used React or anything, it always seems like the React almost starts to like erode away the server side. It always wants to bring things over to the front end, and it makes things very difficult. I don't know. I've always found that you end up having worse two teams, but again, two different separate areas of thought. And LiveView brings everything under house, and it's anyway, it's slick. And yes, doing something like that, updating charting with only like upserts or appending data, that's killer. And you can do it very easily too, which is even better. So we're also using this for, again, if you're football people, Collinsworth, he does the NFL Sunday night broadcasts, national. I found out some interesting stuff, anecdotal, I'll tell you. It also concerns LiveView. We released a new app called Game Time, and it's only for Chris. So when they're in the booth, they're up there in the stadium, and they're talking. They're not allowed, there's no internet connection up in the booth. Can't have anything, no phones, Computers cannot be connected, nothing, period. Even for presentation purposes, nothing. All data goes through the NFL truck outside in the parking lot. All data. And if you get caught screwing around, they're going to talk. So we have to create an app that's local with all this player information against teams, matchups, positions, playbooks, all that kind of stuff. And again, have it all local. We did that in LiveView. That was one person. And it debuted 3 weeks ago. And, like the chief of NBC is calling. He's like, whoa, wait a minute. Hold on. Can I get a login? Like, sure. And again, it's LiveView running on an iMac. That's it. One person. So, I mean, this goes out the entire American broadcast. And they're not even allowed to touch stuff. Like there's no mice, there's no keyboards. You have to sit there. You have to look and you have to be able to understand stuff visually. So it's been quite interesting. So
it
maybe
debuted 3 weeks ago, and then the Browns start winning. Who coded something for
well, I'm from Cleveland, so here's a funny anecdote as well. They told me this. So again, if you're football people, I forget what year it was. 2008, something like that. It was when the Patriots had the perfect season. They were 18-0. They go to the Super Bowl and they ended up losing to the Giants. The whole David and Goliath thing. Our first data cell was to the Giants 3 weeks before that game. That came out of Excel sheets. So I'm not saying we won the Super Bowl, of course, but that was our first data cell. And that was $500 to the New York Giants. And again, 3 weeks later, they pull out, this crazy ass win. They end up in, I was certainly not part of it. They end up in ESPN, New York, Times, all that kind of stuff. Sports Illustrated. So if you watch, national football games, please watch. You'll see a PFF score or a PFF ranking on a lot of different illustrative, figures on TV. And that's all the stuff we calculate. We do that behind the scenes with R and I don't know, a bunch of Python crap. So fun times. Anyway, thank you for having me. It's been glorious. Yeah. If you ever want to hit me up, matt@matt-darby.com or, I'm on Twitter, Thanks all.